The Fort Douglas Cemetery tour was October 29th, and we got a chance to visit with some of the citizens buried there.
Going green on campus, what's it all mean? We'll find out.
And why is it that the weather may seem colder on campus versus the valley? And what you can expect to see for your weekend. Find out here.
And I'll let you know how the fall sports are doing as they wrap up their seasons. Plus, we'll give you a look at the men's basketball team. Those stories and more coming up on Newsbreak.
From the campus of the University of Utah. News produced by students for students.
Good evening and welcome to Newsbreak. I'm Matt Coma.
And I'm Chloe Wynn. The University of Utah was founded in February of 1850. Since that time, it has shared in and continues to share in the creation of history for the state of Utah.
This area behind me is being used to construct an Honor Scholar community dormitory right now. But during World War I times, it was actually a prisoner of war camp for German soldiers.
Two different types of prisoners here. So there were what we call internees. They were civilians then who came from, they were the editors of newspapers, or they were political activists somewhere in the western United States. Or there were prisoners of war. And these were individuals who were in the military who were captured.
The World War I mania around the country to help to protect the U.S. made almost anyone of German descent eligible to be sent to a prisoner of war camp. Fort Douglas was one of 3 such camps in the United States and was located on the site of present-day University of Utah campus.
Well, the prisoner of war camp was located at the corner of South Campus and Capatchie Drive. Today there's a lot of construction going on there. The old annex is there now. But it would have covered all the way down from where the annex is today down to the west side where the Huntsman Center is. And it would have consisted of a large number of simple wooden barracks surrounded by a high barbed wire fence with a guard tower, machine guns in them on the 4 corners around it.
The camp was built in 1917 and closed in 1919. Most prisoners stayed there for 2 years. But what did that unique community's existence include?
Well, just imagine if you were the camp leader. I mean, what would you do with 2,000 men who were sitting there for 3 years with nothing to do? So the idea was to create activities. And so there were classes, there were college classes. They could earn credits, just like you would going to college at the university, on any variety of topics. And from literature, they had a gymnastics team, they had an orchestra, they played squash, they did a variety of activities, had their own newspaper.
Along with the Fort Douglas Museum, there's also a cemetery, including a monument to 21 World War I POWs buried there. Bringing campus history to you, this is Lexi Jones reporting.
A special section was added to the Fort Douglas Cemetery for those German POW who died there during World War I. All 33 POWs who died in Utah during World War II are also buried there.
The cemetery was established back in 1862 and still operates as an active federal military cemetery. Besides the number of POWs buried there, it is also the resting place of former military and government officials that were involved in Utah during its days as a territory.
On Saturday, October 29th, actors dressed up as citizens buried in the cemetery and told the stories of their characters. Michael Bernard, a historical interpreter, played the role of Governor Doty.
I was born in 1799 in New York. I have my law degree from Michigan. I signed 5 peace treaties with the Shoshone Indians.
Governor James Doty died in 1865 and is buried in this very spot. Bob Voiles is the Fort Douglas Museum director and portrayed Colonel Connor for the cemetery tour.
I am the guy that established Camp Douglas in 1862. My purpose was to protect this territory from Indian attack after the Civil War broke out, and to make sure that Brother Brigham did not decide to become a Confederate. I'm Catholic, anti-Mormon, and anti-polygamist. I and Brigham Young were in constant conflict. Brigham and I never met. We always made it a point. I was a prominent citizen until my death for the Gentiles. He was a prominent citizen for the Mormons. We would get invited to the same functions, and we made darn sure that our arrangements were that we would never be there at the same time.
We got Bob out of character just long enough to answer some questions about the cemetery and its relevance to the university.
All of this turf at one time was Fort Douglas, including the President's Circle was part of Fort Douglas, including Mount Olympus Cemetery was Fort Douglas, including this is the place where the monument is was Fort Douglas. All of that whole area and the University Hospital.
This was Lewis Palmer's first time to the tour, and he says he's worked on campus for 20 years and always wondered about those who were buried in the cemetery.
As the tour itself goes, I thought it was pretty cool to hear the guy that actually killed Crazy Horse is buried here. I had no idea about that. So it was cool.
This is Rachel Green reporting for Newsbreak.
The first grave in the cemetery for which records exist dates back to January of 1863. This history is able to be told today because of journalism.
But is journalism dead? That was a topic of discussion during last week's Siciliano Forum. The Hinckley Institute of Politics presented the 15th annual forum from October 24th to the 28th. Guest speakers from the field talked about the future of journalism and what it means to be a journalist in today's emerging new media society. The future of journalism was picked as the topic of this year's Siciliano Forum because of the changes in the field. The Pew Research Center estimates 1,000 to 1,500 newsroom jobs were lost in 2010. This means print newsrooms are 30% smaller than in the year 2000. There's been talk about the death of journalism, but Salt Lake Tribune editor Nancy Conway argues that's just a myth. Conway says people still want news they can trust, and the printed news still has its core readership, only now it's expanded online. Compared to the other mediums of journalism, print is less. With radio, news is heard. Broadcast news allows you to see and hear, and with online journalism quickly taken over with a combination of print, radio, and broadcast, it can safely be said to be the medium with the most audience. According to the Pew Research Center, 46% of adults go online for news at least 3 times a week, as opposed to 40% who read newspapers. Local television news is a more popular destination at 50%. The crisis facing traditional media is about revenue, not audience, and in that crisis, newspapers has been hit the hardest. Ad revenues for U.S. magazines fell 48% from 2006 to 2012, or 10, I'm sorry. However, as print is losing revenue, online is gaining. In 2010, web advertising for the U.S. surpassed print advertising for the first time, reaching $26 billion. To listen to the complete Siciliano forums, you can visit kuer.org. And now let's go over to the weather desk and see what Chelsea has for us.
Some people may think it is colder up here on the hill than it is down in the valley, but we may have all been deceived by the wind chill effect. Because the University of Utah is nestled right up against the mountains, we get what is called drainage flow. If you think of it like a river, when the passage is narrow, the river flows faster, and when the passage is wide, the river flows slower. So when it's coming off the mountain, the air is moving fast, and that is where and how we feel the wind. As the air moves down into the valley, it is in fact colder, but because the air is moving slower, the wind isn't as strong, so it doesn't feel as cold. In extreme cases, drainage flows may attain speeds as high as 44 miles per hour, but usually slide downhill at speeds between 4 and 8 miles per hour. So even though the weather may seem colder here on campus, it may not actually be. Back to you.
As you may know, weather inversions play a role in air quality alert throughout the Salt Lake Valley, especially during the winter months. We'll check back with Chelsea in a little bit in the show.
The weather was beautiful last week as the women's soccer team played host to number 6 UCLA and USC. The Lady Utes shut out the Trojans 3-0 Friday night to extend their home winning streak to 7 games. Freshman Katie Taylor scored her first career goal just 3 minutes into the game, and the Utes never looked back, adding 2 more goals in the first half. Utah looked to take that momentum into Sunday's matchup against UCLA, and they did so, forcing the number 6 team in the nation to overtime. But in the 98th minute, UCLA's Cindy LaRue found the back of the net to give the Bruins a 1-0 overtime victory. Next up for the Lady Utes is senior night as they wrap up the season tomorrow night against Colorado. As the fall sports wind down, the winter sports begin to take the stage. One of those teams is the men's basketball team. Now the Utes are picked dead last in the Pac-12 as far as the media goes. The Utes will try to prove the media wrong as they held the annual red-white scrimmage up at the Huntsman Center last week. The team divided into 2 teams and played 3 periods at the Huntsman Center last Wednesday. Junior Dijon Farr scored a game-high 15 points for the white team as they beat the red team in 2 of the 3 periods. David Foster led with 3 blocks to go with his 8 points and 9 rebounds in the game, as you see him go to the hoop right there. Jason Washburn led the red team with 14 points and 7 rebounds. Head coach Larry Kraskowiak said while it was fun for the other guys, it was still a lot of work to do left before the season starts. You can see the Utes again tomorrow night as well as they host Adams State in an exhibition game at the Huntsman Center. And after the break, we'll let you know how the football team did in the annual blackout game against Oregon State.
The weekend is coming up and cooler weather is here. What type of plans will you be able to make for your weekend? I'll have the forecast after Newsbreak returns.
Welcome back to Newsbreak. Now let's go back over to Chelsea, who has a look at this weekend's weather.
Today we saw sun and a few clouds with gusty winds. The high was 57 degrees with winds 15 to 25 miles per hour. The low tonight, as you see, will be 38 degrees. Tomorrow, we will have a high of 45 degrees with possible showers and a high in the mid-40s. Our low will be in the low 30s. Saturday the 5th, we will see snow showers at times with a high of 36 degrees, so be sure to dress warm. Sunday, the sun will show itself for a minute with a mix of clouds. Also expect to see lows in the high in the low 40s and the low of 31 degrees. On Friday, we see the green indicating some rain and snow showers over most of the state here. Saturday, we'll have snow over most of the Salt Lake Valley, and by Sunday, it will be on its way out, and so you should be good there. Looks like fall is on its way out and winter is on its way in. So break out those coats and gloves and because it's going to get chilly this weekend. Now back over to you.
The University of Utah's Office of Sustainability says it committed to establishing the University of Utah as a leader in working towards a more sustainable future for our campus and for the broader Utah community. But what is the office doing to make this a reality?
The University of Utah is working to reduce its impact on the environment through sustainable change.
The Sustainability Office is set up to really look for ways to coordinate and communicate and catalyze sustainability activities here on the campus. We work on everything from energy efficiency projects to working with folks on recycling, campus gardens, solar projects. We have established a climate action plan for the University of Utah under President Michael Young's direction a couple, 3 years ago. We have a climate neutrality plan for the University of Utah to be carbon neutral by 2050. A smaller project that is student funded through the SCIF initiative, the Sustainable Campus Initiative Fund. Solar panels are printed on small things that look like leaves and will be attached to the side of a building. It will provide shade on the side of the building as well as produce power.
This is one of our student-managed and student-led sustainability-related projects through the Office of Sustainability. These spaces have been used as living laboratories for students. We want students from engineering to economics and communications to be able to recognize those connections between their field of study and food systems.
Sowing the seeds for a brighter future. This is Joseph Laney reporting for Newsbreak.
The Office of Sustainability isn't the only office on campus looking to make some changes.
Painting the town red, that is a theme for the new university tradition launched this year. It started through a partnership between the university's athletic department and community partners.
While visiting downtown, you may have noticed storefronts painted red and covered in University of Utah logos. This is part of the new Red Movement, which is an initiative to get the community more involved in university athletics. The movement has been created by the Downtown Alliance and Utah Athletics. Local businesses are decorating their shops to compete in Paint the Town Red. The dance team in Swoop and the cheerleaders will be stopping by to judge, and the winners will be recognized at Utah's next home game against UCLA. Another part of the Red Movement is Unite, which brings fans down to the Gateway for a parade and pep rally.
I think it's a good experience for the university to come down here to the Gateway and express the youth's spirit.
The cheerleaders lead the parade that started at 6 p.m. and marched down the middle of Rio Grande Street, followed by the Utah Marching Band and basketball team. They threw out Halloween candy as they walked. After the parade, fans got autographed posters from the basketball team while the marching band played the pep rally. Unite brings a couple hundred fans out, but does it give Salt Lake City that college town feel that the movement is trying to create?
No, I think it's positive. I just think it needs to grow. It'll take time. It's brand new.
The next and final Unite will take place on November 11th, the day before Utah takes on UCLA. For more information about the Red Movement events, go to theredmvmt.com. From downtown at the Gateway, I'm Matthew Williams reporting for Newsbreak.
Unites may be a part of the Paint the Town Red movement, but this past Saturday the color of choice for fans was black, as the Utes took on Oregon State in the annual blackout game at Rice-Eccles Stadium.
That's right, Chloe. Well, the Utes have had a little bit of a mix-up as far as the blackout game goes. Fans questioning why the U doesn't in the first place, saying that the game is pointless and just another way for the Utes to make money. Although the Utes are 2-1 in the blackout game, they look for Pac-12 win number 1 last Saturday against Oregon State. A full house of 45,017 fans dressed in black to see the Utes win their first Pac-12 game against the Beavers, 27-8. The Utes jumped out to an early 24-0 lead, and the Ute defense forced 4 turnovers to help secure the win. John Hayes threw for only 62 yards, but had 2 touchdowns in the game. But the big story of the game was this man right here, John White IV. John finished with 205 yards and a touchdown. But despite the solid running game, Coach Kyle Whittingham said after the game it was the turnovers that helped the Utes get the win.
The thing we didn't do is we didn't turn the ball over excessively, which was key. And we had, I think, 1 turnover, and we had 4 takeaways. And when we win the turnover margin, we're a pretty good football team. You know, we can compete with who we need to compete with, and so that's been our key all season long. Hopefully, you know, we can put back-to-back games together. We'll find out. We're going to go to Arizona next week, but if we can possess the football, we got a chance to win.
Next up for the Utes is Arizona on Saturday. You can catch it at 5 p.m. Mountain Time on KJazz, sorry, not Root Sports, KJazz.
So Matt, how was like being in the stadium for the Utes' first Pac-12 win?
You know, it was actually really nice. There was a lot of energy in the crowd. Of course, the blackout game, so everyone was there. Almost a full sold-out crowd, 45,000. Wasn't too bad, but it was overall a good game. Pac-12 win number 1. Hopefully, they'll be able to get number 2 against Arizona. So.
I hope so too, and I'm sure the team would love that as well. Well, that's all the time we have here today on Newsbreak, the show produced by students for students. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time.